no digas that you're constipated in the UK or in when you're speaking English, because that's a different kind of. It's the same thing, right? It's just a different end. Should we say it like that?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm very excited today to be joined once again on the channel by Andy from the Palm Springs Linguist. How you doing, Andy?
Great to be here. I'm looking forward to this. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun. The video is gonna be, well, it'll be in English, right? But it will be a bit of Spanglish, because what we're gonna do today is look at the false cognates in Spanish in English. So things that they're kind of like false friends, right? A lot of people call them false friends. We'll jump straight into it so we can give you the examples. Should we do one each? Do you want to start, Andy, with the
Sure.
list, and then I'll do the second one? Should we do it like that?
Okay. I'll pull up the list. Okay, so the first one that we took a look at is actual. And actual, when you look at it, it looks just like actual. And of course in English we say that something, oh, that actually happened, it really happened. But that doesn't mean that at all. So what does that mean in Spanish, actual?
Yes, the actual is like it's current, up to date. And then with that, you've got actualmente as well, which is another one. A lot of native English people get wrong. They say actualmente, and they're trying to say
Yeah.
actually, but actualmente in Spanish means at the moment, right? So it's a real tough one. It's a false friend. We'd say de hecho is the one I
Yeah.
tend to teach my guys. De hecho, I don't know about you, Andy, what you'd
De
say for that.
hecho,
Yeah.
de hecho, en realidad, that might be another
Ah,
thing I
yeah,
might say.
that's a good one. En
Yeah.
realidad, yeah. De hecho.
And the word actual, once you know that it means current, then when you hear like the verb actualizar, I had heard a native Spanish speaker say that to me. Oh, mi computadora necesito actualizarlo. La. And I'm like, oh, I've never heard that word before, but because it means current, to make current, oh, you mean to update.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? All makes
Yeah,
sense. Once you
totally
get
makes
that,
sense.
actual, up to date, actualmente, at the moment, up to date. Nice one. Cool. Right. I'll start. I'll continue with the next one. We've got a classic, a real classic. Embarazada. Embarazada. You'd think it means embarrassed, right? Oh, estoy embarazado. Estoy embarazada. You don't want to be saying that. Embarazada means pregnant.
Right. That's like the classic false friend. And I'd say that's not only the classic false friend for Spanish and English, but if you look across the languages, that's one of the all-time best.
Yeah, I think
So,
we've all said it, haven't we?
yeah, and
Embarazado.
if you actually want to say that you're embarrassed in Spanish, you have to rely on other words like tengo vergüenza.
Yeah, that's it, innit? Vergüenza. Me da vergüenza. It gives me vergüenza. It's such a beautiful word, isn't it?
Okay, so our next one is one that honestly, it didn't even occur to me that this is a false friend. But when you look at it, like, well, of course. And the word is pie. Pie, which, is spelled P-I-E. I think because they don't sound similar whatsoever. They sound so different. Pie and pie. But if you see it in writing, you could look at that and and get the two confused because they are both nouns. So pie, of course, means foot, and that's related to words like pedestrian. Somebody walks on their foot. In English, and then in Spanish, pie. What would you say, torta, or what would you say for pie?
I don't really know. They don't really eat pies. I guess you'd say, yeah, torta would be a word you might be able to use, but because pie is just what I guess you eat them in the States as well, right? But it's a real British
Yeah.
food, a pie. They don't have them. You can't go to there's I don't think I've seen a Greg's in Spain. I don't know if you guys have Greg's in the States, but they basically
No,
sell
no.
pies. It's what they're famous
So
for. But yeah, it's a
I'd
good one. It's a
I'd
good
say in
one.
the yeah, I'd say in the United States that like meat pies are not common. That's we might have chicken pot pie, but that's about it, and that's usually just in the grocery store in the freezer section. But like if we go to a bakery, they're not going to have any savory pies or meat pies. For us, a pie is much more likely to be a sweet pie, like a chocolate pie or banana cream pie or strawberry pie. So I think I would say I'm kind of in my mind, I'm like, is it torta or pastel? Pastel de fresa or torta de fresa? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, one of those two, right? For me, yeah,
Yeah.
pastel is almost like, even though we've got the word pasty in English, do you know what a pasty is?
No. That sounds like a Britishism.
There's
What is that?
yeah, it's basically a little pie that originates from Cornwall, I believe, um, right in the south of England, the UK.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, they're like little pies. Yes, you got pastel, pasty, pastry. It comes from pastry, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so the next one we've got is libreria, which in Spanish means a bookshop or bookstore in American.
Yeah.
Um, not library. It's
Yeah.
kind of it's another classic, isn't it? But it's also a bit of a boring one, to be honest. Like, and it makes sense,
Right.
right? Because in Spanish, libro is a book,
Right.
and I don't know. So Spanish for library would be biblioteca, no? So I
Yes.
don't know why they say biblioteca, bibliography.
Yeah.
You're the linguist, man. Have you got any etymology gems on that
Well,
one? Why do they say
when you said
biblioteca?
when you said bibliography, I think that's perfect. That's connected etymologically. What I find interesting, or what I find tricky about this one, is that they're very similar, right? Like there are a lot of contexts where if you said, "Oh, yo voy a ir a la librería para leer un libro," like you could easily, if you misunderstood that and thought they meant library rather than bookshop or
Mm.
bookstore, it still makes sense in the context. So in a way, this is kind of a dangerous one because you could easily think that it's the other because it probably will make sense. Yeah, so the next one is asistir. And asistir, of course, it looks like the English to assist, to help somebody, but you would really like I would use ayudar for that. The real meaning, it means to attend, like to attend a concert or to attend a class or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, spot on. Asistir. Yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it? When you try and translate, how would I say assist? Yeah, because asistir is a false friend, false cognate. Then you kind of stuck with ayudar. I can't think of a more poetic way to say it. The Spanish
Yeah,
say it, ayudar, ayúdame. Help
yeah.
me, assist me. Assist is a little bit yeah, I can't think of a nice way to say that in Spanish. Um, yeah, speaks to the richness of the English language, doesn't it? Because for us, there's a real difference between assisting someone and helping. There's a slight kind of
It's
assisting
subtle.
feels like it's subtle. It's subtle. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's subtle, but there's a
yeah,
difference. But in Spanish, I think, I mean, to my knowledge, there might be a word. Correct
yeah,
me if I'm wrong, guys. If you want to write in the comments, they normally do. People
yeah,
in the comments as soon as you as soon as you make a
yeah,
mistake, quite a lot. They're like, "You're wrong."
yeah. Hopefully we've got some native Spanish speakers that can inform us. Yeah, you're making me think about, okay, what's the difference between to assist and to help? And all I can think of is that if you assist somebody, if you help somebody, you're probably helping them to do something. If you assist somebody, it's possible that you might do it as well as they do it. But I think it's very context dependent. I don't think it always means that. But it does seem like there's a little bit of a subtlety and I don't know the subtle difference in Spanish either. I would just say ayudar. But the good thing is that that always works.
I've
Uh-huh.
got another good one, right? Number 6. I've managed to get all the good ones. So we've just done this randomly. We've made the list. And we're kind of doing one by one.
Yeah.
I've got another great one. Sorry, I'm stealing this from you. Constipado.
Uh-huh.
Constipado is another one that you're going to find out very quickly. If you're a native Spanish speaker and you're trying to say in English that you're a bit blocked up, you're a bit bunged up, as they say in the UK, you got a bit of a cold. If you're a bit constipado, si estás constipado, no digas that you're constipated in the UK or in the when you're speaking English, because that's a different kind of I mean it's the same thing, right? It's just a different end. Should we say it like that?
Yeah, yeah. It's a different part of the body that's plugged up. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. But in Spanish it's completely fine if you want to say que estás constipado, you're just a bit bunged up. Resfriado is another word I would tend to use if I had a bit of a
Uh-huh.
cold, which makes sense, right? Like friado, frío is in there.
Okay, so here's one I'm hoping somebody puts in the comments. How would we express that in Spanish? I
Oh
I would
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah,
to
right.
I would have to like describe it. I wouldn't be able to say it directly because I just don't know the word. Okay, so the next one I think is an interesting one. So molestar. And of course, it
Cool.
looks like the English to molest, but it's not nearly as strong in Spanish. So molestar, it just simply means to bother somebody or to annoy somebody. So I have a story about that. I was in a high school Spanish class, and the teacher wrote the word molestar on the board, and then she turned around and said, "So molestar, it means to bother somebody." And then this bratty kid behind me raises his hand and says, "No, it doesn't. It means to molest." And she stopped dead in her tracks and turned around and he said, "And if you're molesting somebody, you're bothering them." So I am
True.
so glad she did that because it will always stick in my mind. So I have some like second cousins that are from Mexico that I met, and we discussed this, and they didn't realize that it was a false friend. You know, they didn't know. So I asked them, like, once I explained it and everything, and I asked them, well, how would you actually say to molest somebody? And the word they came up with is violar,
Mm,
which
yeah.
completely makes sense. If you're molesting somebody, you're definitely violating them. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So that was I think that's an interesting translation, and it's a good translation.
Yeah, I've also got a story with molestar in what when teaching English to Spanish,
Uh-huh.
like it must have been about 12, 13, 40. So an awkward age, right, for me to kind of explain to them what molest means. So I was
Yeah.
kind of just I kept it to myself. I was kind of just like I chuckled, when they
Uh-huh.
said, my brother molests me. I was like, I mean, I hope he doesn't, and if he does, it's not the place to tell me. No,
Yeah.
we say annoy, you know, to annoy someone. Uh, but another one of those like subtle words, bother. I find bother is one of those untranslatable ones.
Mhm.
Que sepa yo, to my knowledge, I can't think of a good translation for bother because it's not quite annoy, right? When you
Right.
annoy someone, you're or someone annoys you, they piss you off. We say in the UK,
Right.
they annoy you, they piss you off. Um, but to bother is like it's not as strong, is it?
Right. It's just a
Someone
very
bothering you.
subtle I think it's just a subtle difference of intensity.
Mm.
But that's where the word molestar and to molest, it's interesting because in a strange sense, it is like just the other side of the continuum. It's like they're both on the continuum of bothering somebody, but one is really minor. Molestar is really minor, and then in English, to molest, I mean that's serious.
Yeah. So the
So
next one, is it my go or your go?
I think it's you.
It's mine, isn't it? Uh, yeah, ropa. La ropa. La ropa in Spanish is clothing. La
Right.
ropa. Obviously, it sounds like rope in English. Rope. would be una cuerda, I think.
Yeah, that's
Una
what I would
cuerda.
use.
Yeah, which is kind of like cuerda is cord.
Yeah.
Another good trick for all you Spanish learners, well, and English learners, Spanish speakers learning English. Let me get this right. So the cuerda, C-U, so the U and the E together can be like made into an O, right, in English, like
Right.
puerta. Well, this is going into like Italian, puerta and
Uh-huh.
porta, you know. So if in doubt, if you got see that whatever it is, the U and the E or the E and the U
Right.
together, make it into an O, and you kind of guess, right? But yeah,
Right.
ropa is one of those ones. Yeah, yeah. I don't know why we say it. I'm thinking about it now, and I do know that the B and the P's are very interchangeable, right? If you make that sound
Right.
p, so then roba, and in Italian, so I'm trying not to like draw from my Italian, right? But um, they use that as a slang word for meaning clothes as well. La
Oh,
roba.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, and it's robe in English, right?
Right.
So
That
if in
that would
doubt,
be the connected word. Yeah.
yeah,
That's an
yeah,
excellent way to remember it. Remember the Spanish meaning of it is to connect it to the word robe. Obviously, ropa, meaning clothing, is much more general. It's not one specific type of clothing, but it's those kind of connections that help us remember. So one time I was a third grade teacher, and I was talking in Spanish to a bilingual kid, and there was a picture of there was two guys in the picture, and so one had like a lasso, and then there was another one that didn't have a lasso. And I myself misuse this, and it's one of those laughable moments that makes it so that you always remember. I actually already knew the difference, but I made a mistake, and I said I was trying to point. I pointed to the one without a lasso, and I said el señor sin ropa. And he just laughed and laughed. And I could tell from his laughing,
sin ropa.
he knew enough. Of course, what I was saying is, I basically said the nude guy, you know, the
Yeah,
guy without
yes.
clothing. Yeah, el señor sin ropa. The moment I said it, we both laughed and we both knew what I did. And again, it'll make it so that I always remember it. Realizar, realizar, which of course it looks like to realize. And what it actually means is like to accomplish or to carry out. I think this is a really interesting one because if you look at the word and analyze it, you've got the base word of real, and then you've got the suffix of eyes, realize, which means to make real. And when you think of it in those terms, yeah, if you accomplish something, you make it real. Like it completely makes sense. It actually kind of makes me wonder, how did we end up saying to realize in English, which, of course, in English, to realize something means like you figured it out. It
Yeah,
doesn't mean
right.
that you did something.
Nah, nah. I'm gonna give a point to the Spaniards on this one because it makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Realizar, like you said, to make real, um, makes a lot more sense than how we use it. Yeah, they would say darse cuenta,
Uh-huh.
which darse to give yourself cuenta, account, to take into account. I guess we say that in English, don't we?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a link.
Huh. I always think of like darse cuenta, like to inform or to be informed, something like that. Huh.
Yeah. What would you use for realize then? I would use darse cuenta. No me he dado
Uh,
cuenta. I didn't
so
realize. Or notar. I guess you could say notar as well for notice.
I think here's an interesting one. I think that sometimes to realize is translated in Spanish as saber, but specifically in the past tense. And then, so like if you say, oh, lo supe, I figured it
Mhm.
out, and you use it in the preterite, where if I say lo sabía, that wouldn't mean to realize. It would mean that I knew it. I used to know it.
Yeah, that's true. Ah, I never thought of that. Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
So I think that's a really interesting one because it's the specific verb tense, the aspect of the verb that makes it translate into realize. Where with us in English, we can't use the word to know, the verb to know to make that. It's like, no, we have a separate word. So I think the next one's
Yeah,
kind
of
of
course.
interesting too. So what's the next one?
Yeah, this one's another a real common one people mix up, going both ways, you know. Sensible. Sensible in Spanish is sensitive in English. So we don't say sensitivo, but sensible, if you want to say you're kind of sensitive. Um, which does make sense, pardon the pun,
Yeah,
if you if you think about the sense, right? Sense is your feeling, your senses, sentir, sentirse. So
right. You're
it's all
able
in
to
there. Does
sense. Yeah. So what makes it tricky though is that the word that it sounds like in English, sensible, sensible doesn't mean sensitive at all. What does sensible mean in English?
sensible, yeah. When you're sensible, you're kind of do you do something in a and it like an intelligent kind of way, taking into account a lot of kind of things. You make a smart decision. I'm trying to think of the word that they use.
I think
¿Cómo se dice en
reasonable.
español? Sensato? Do they say sensato in Spanish? I can't remember.
I think one
Sensato.
of the words you could say is razonable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe they would go down that route more, wouldn't they?
Well, I think there's more than
Razonable.
one word that would work depending on the context, but that's one of the words that comes to mind for me. Because meaning sensible in English really kind of meaning like reasonable, or like you said, like well thought out. Okay, so the
Yes, that
next
would make
one,
sense.
carpet. And of course, if you're a Spanish speaker and you hear the word carpet, it's going to remind you of carpeta, which means folder or like a file. And if you think about file as like a digital folder, but carpeta and carpet are two very different things. So carpet, ¿cómo se dice en español? ¿Es alfombra o es
Alfombra,
alfombra
yeah.
rug? Okay.
Same difference, which is another interesting thing. Like, I think culturally, right? Because in the Spanish-speaking countries, they're hotter countries. Certainly in Spain, the alfombra would be yeah, like a carpet or a rug. They don't kind of differentiate because they don't tend to
Uh-huh.
have carpets, right? I don't know you guys in the States. Depends on the state, I guess. If it's a very warm state, I don't think you've got carpets there either. But certainly in the UK, you need a
Yeah.
carpet, otherwise you're cold. Next one, exit. Exit in Spanish, a lot of people confuse it with éxito.
Uh-huh.
Éxito means success. Exit, éxito. So exit is la salida, ¿no? where you exit, por donde
Right.
sales. But éxito. Now, why would they say that? I guess because you're kind of when you're succeeding, you are exiting. Do you know? It's like
Yeah.
X means to stand out from, right? Like to exist is to kind of stand out from something. So you're standing out, aren't you?
Right. By
Éxito.
going outside, you're standing out. Yeah. And another context for éxito would be like a hit, like la canción era un éxito. Like the song was a hit, which
Okay,
of
yeah,
course
that's
is
one of
similar
those.
to success.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's all
what's our
close
next
here in
word?
England.
Record. Record. So or record, either one.
Yeah.
Record or record. That's a homograph, so depending on how you pronounce it. Um, So that I think is really different, really interesting because if you're a Spanish speaker, you might think that they're saying recordar. And of course, recordar quiere decir acordarse de algo. It means that you're remembering something. Um, which I think is kind of interesting because like if you create a record that you listen to, like in the old days, you are creating something to help you remember the music that was performed at the time. So I
Yeah.
do I do see a connection there.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely a connection, isn't there? A record, record, yeah, remember. Yeah, there's definitely
Yeah, and when you
a
say to
connection.
record, like I could be typing down a transcript of what we're saying. I could be recording what we're saying. Well, if you record what we're saying, you're helping yourself to remember it, or you're creating something that will give you that memory, that'll help you remember it. So yeah, there's definitely a
Mm.
logic and connection between the Spanish and the English, even though they're different.
Yes, I'd also add to that with the word remember. And I've not looked this up, but my gut, my intuition on it would be something to do with the membrane, you know, in the brain,
Yeah, and the
remember.
word absolutely, and the word memory would be connected.
Oh yeah. Mm. That's a more obvious one, isn't it? I even think I went straight to membrane. Yeah, of course. Memory, memorize, remember. Oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Because there's the B in there, so I could see how your mind went to membrane because that also has a B. Yeah. Okay, what's the next
Yeah.
one?
So, well, before we jump on to that,
Oh
the
yeah.
next one, we'll translate it, right? So to record something, because that's a verb in English as well, you record something is grabar, which is, oh, grabar is another one we could have added. Do you know?
Yeah.
Because
Oh, to
grabar,
grab.
yeah, exactly.
Right,
You
to
think,
grab. Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but it's another one
Grabar.
that makes sense. You know, you can kind of keep going down to these rabbit holes, can't you? And follow the words. Be like, okay, so you got record is to remember, recordar. Okay, to record is grabar, grab, agarrar, no? To like grab
Uh-huh.
something, agarrar.
Uh-huh.
And when you're recording something, it's another one of those you can kind of imagine if you're kind of recording on your phone or on like a video recorder or whatever. You're grabbing it, aren't you? You're grabbing it. I'm
Right.
taking this. So it makes sense. Grabar
Yeah.
to record.
Yeah.
Um, the next one we've got. Oh, is this my one again?
Yeah.
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 I've got another good one. Introduce in English. To introduce yourself. For a Spaniard learning English for the first time, they might find that a bit strange to say, you know, let me introduce myself. They would say, steady on, we've only just met, you know. Um, and for the English people, the other way around, the English speakers, saying introduce, introducir, is that right in Spanish? Introducir, yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
Is to uh, insert yourself, I guess. Would it be
Yeah.
introducir? It's like a more physical thing. You
Right.
kind of insert something, put something in. So you don't want to be introducing yourself like that in Spanish. You want to present yourself. Yeah, presentar, presentarse.
I
Um,
don't I don't even know if this exists in Spanish, but like in French, wouldn't you say like installer? Like that would be the translation, which is kind of like
instalar.
yeah, it's kind of like to install.
Yes, put yourself in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So presentar. I don't know if you've got a story about that one, or is that one you
No.
tend to not have
Honestly, this
issues
is
with?
one that I didn't really think about the difference, but I would never, but I used it correctly. Like I would always say, oh, voy a presentar a mi amigo a la otra persona. Like I would definitely use presentar rather than to introduce, but it didn't really dawn on me that I'm not using the word introduce or introducir. So
Mm.
uh, I must be working around. Like if I want to say to insert or something, I'm probably avoiding it by saying poner or something like that when I'm speaking Spanish. I think I avoid this.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fairness, that's more of a common way of saying it. They use poner a lot
Yeah.
in Spanish, and we'll do another video. Hopefully, if you're up for it, we'll do another one about like phrasal verbs because I think that could be a really interesting one for
Yeah.
this. Well, for both, because we kind of have to translate, don't we, from phrasal verbs into Spanish. It's really hard. That's why you got to think
Right.
literally if you want to like work out how to say, well, work out, for example. Do you know? You got
Yeah.
to think, what do I really mean? Anyway, we'll leave that for another video.
Yeah. That's an
Um,
interesting topic. Yeah. So the
yeah,
next
yeah,
one
yeah.
is sopa. Sopa, and of course, sopa looks like soap. It even has the same letters as soap, and just in a different order. But it actually means soup. Um, I think this is a pretty easy one. I think the tricky one here is that you need to know the actual word for soap. Jabón. You know, it's because even though sopa does look like soap, it also looks like soup. So that kind of makes sense.
And we got another one like that. The next one we got is codo. El codo, or los codos, son the
Mhm.
elbows, right? Codos. And this was another one I kind of, when we wrote the list out, I thought to myself, oh, that's one I've never really had an issue with, you know. I just
No,
kind of learned el codo, okay, cool. But yeah, code, right? So going the other way for a Spanish person, wanting to translate, or maybe, well, no, but a Spanish person wouldn't have an issue with it, would they? Código, the code, no, that's quite easy.
yeah, for sure. The two words, the actual translation of código certainly looks like code as well. So, you know, I've never heard anybody misuse those, but but there's definitely a connection. I mean, they definitely look misleading.
Next one we've got fábrica. Fábrica is a factory, which is another one of those Spanish words which I give them credit. It makes sense, you know, to
Right,
fabricate, to make something.
right.
Um, makes sense. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one to the Spaniards. But obviously for us, fábrica looks like fabric, which would be tela in
Right,
Spanish, la tela, um,
right.
which is another word for fabric or cloth. I often see people think cloth, fabric, tela, fábrica. Yes, we would say factory in
So I think
English.
the only way that you could really confuse the two is if you combined them into the same context. Like if there was a fa I was I almost said the Spanish. If there was a factory that made cloth, or a factory that made like fabric for sewing, then it might be confusing. But you know, it would be rare to confuse the two.
Nice one. All right, let's wrap this up. Do you want to do the last one?
Yeah. Okay. Emocionante. So emocionante, of course, it looks like emotional. Um, it means exciting or thrilling. Um, but it can easily be confused with emotional because it really does sound like that. I think this is a tricky one because they're not that different. You know, they're both feelings, but I think that the connotation of the feelings is very different. Like if you say that if you say that somebody's emotional, it depends on the context, but that might be a little bit negative. Where I don't
Yeah,
think of
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that really speaks to the differences between the cultures. You know, certainly. I mean, I'm living in Italy right now, and when I lived in Spain for 4 years as well, they're a lot more like flamboyant and emotional. You know, than us from
yeah,
the northern countries. We're very kind of. I think the English it kind of depends on the person, right? But typically, people from the north of Europe are very like straight and frio. They like to call
uh-huh,
us cold, you know, which I think is a bit harsh personally. I wouldn't call
yeah,
my people fria, but um, they're a lot more emotional, you know. So when they get excited, emocionante. Yeah, it's one of those ones I struggle to translate often when I'm speaking in Spanish. Um, oh, how exciting, you know? They would kind of just say, oh, qué emoción, qué bien, qué. They kind of I think they would kind of express it more than say it is exciting, right? Which speaks to what I
right,
just said about they kind of just, or they'd say something like an exclamation, "Qué bien, no?" Or whatever the dialect is.
right.
Hostia, say, hostia, qué bien, qué guay. You know,
Uh,
they express it, whereas we're a little bit more reserved, right? So, oh, how
right,
exciting, you know? How ex
yeah,
I just realized that as we've been speaking now. Very interesting.
yeah,
Epic.
yeah.
All right, nice one. Hey, Andy, this has been an absolute pleasure. Guys, make sure like and subscribe, Laid Back Languages, and also go and check out Andy's channel at the Palm Springs Linguist. You'll find him on YouTube. You've got Facebook groups as well. I'll leave the links in the
Yeah.
description box below. And yeah, like and subscribe. Go over to his channel because we'll be doing some epic stuff on there. We've got some great ideas. I'm really excited. Finish on that
Very
note.
good.
Muchísimas gracias, Andy, y hasta
Muchas
la próxima.
gracias. Hasta la próxima.